everybody, Mr. Dave here.
And Arnold.
Today we have a fantastic show for you. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to the very beginning.
Yes, the very beginning. I remember I was so much smaller then and very socky.
Like I said, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, to the very first episode, and we're going to show you each episode in succession over a 4-part series.
Oh, that's so very exciting. I can't wait to watch.
Me either. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, sit back,
grab your popcorn,
and enjoy the show.
Once upon a time, in a very faraway land, lived 3 little pigs. The 3 brothers were accomplished pastry chefs and were eager to move out of their parents' homes. So they ventured forth to find their fortune and affordable housing. Now, the foreman they hired for the best job, a Mr. A. Wolf, seemed a bit of a shady character. However, he was the best choice the pigs had, considering their monetary situation.
So, you want to pick what your new homes are going to be made out of?
Then Mr. Wolf placed 3 materials on the table in front of him: straw, a stick, and a single brick. He pushed the straw and stick to the front nearest the pig brothers, and pulled the brick close to him, attempting to hide it under his personage.
Now, these 2 fine materials have been used in making homes for centuries. They're light, they're easy to work with, and extremely cheap.
The brothers all looked at the stick and straw, and 2 of the brothers immediately picked up the materials, one the stick, the other the straw. The 3rd brother, being the shrewd and observant one of the group, pointed to the half-hidden brick beneath Mr. Wolf's arms.
Oh, this is a brick. It's heavy and it's hard to work with, and much more expensive than the straw or the stick. Why not go with one of those, like your brothers here?
The 3rd brother was persistent and was not swayed by Mr. Wolf, and he insisted that his home be made of the bricks. After they all agreed on designs, the brothers left the meeting, having paid for their work in advance, looking forward to the new custom homes they will soon all have. After they left, Mr. Wolf's demeanor changed drastically. He stooped forward and maniacally rubbed his paws together, musing aloud to himself.
Finally, once I have those pigs' homes built, I will easily be able to break in and steal all those yummy pastries those infernal pigs make. But what do I do about the brick home?
The evil Mr. Wolf stopped and pondered his plight. But soon enough his wicked mind came up with a solution.
I know! I'll just make a copy of his key, and then when he's asleep at night, I can take the key and break into his house.
2 weeks later, the homes were built, and the pig brothers had all settled in, each one making mounds of delicious pastries for their stall. That day, Mr. Wolf struck.
Little pig, let me in!
Of course the first pig opened the door to his straw home and curiously asked why Mr. Wolf had returned with such a large sack, and demanded entry.
I'm here to take all your yummy pastries!
Well, the first brother denied him entry most vociferously and slammed the door.
Then I'll off, and I'll buff, and I'll blow your house down!
With that, Mr. Wolf took a deep breath, his lungs expanding and protruding like a balloon. Then he exhaled violently. The straw home simply could not stand up to this tirade and came tumbling down atop the poor brother, who passed out from fear. Then Mr. Wolf made his way back to the stack of pastries in the kitchen and put every last morsel into his large sack. Mr. Wolf then absconded off to the home of the next brother, in his home of sticks.
Little pig, let me in!
The second pig opened the door to his stick home, and he curiously asked why Mr. Wolf had returned with a partially filled large sack, and demanded entry.
I'm here to take all your yummy pastries!
Well, this brother denied him entry as well, and slammed the door, both annoyed and perplexed.
Then I'll off, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down!
Once again, Mr. Wolf took a deep breath, his lungs expanding and protruding, akin to a bullfrog, and he exhaled violently. The stick home simply could not stand up to this windy barrage, and came tumbling down atop the poor brother, who passed out from shock. Mr. Wolf then made his way to the stack of pastries, and put each one into his large sack. Mr. Wolf then gleefully gallivanted off to the home of the next brother, in his home of bricks.
Little pig, let me in!
The third pig simply yelled from his kitchen that he was not in the habit of allowing rude people into his domicile.
I'm here to take all your yummy pastries!
The last brother simply replied that this was even more reason not to allow him access. Mr. Wolf, disconcerted by the change in routine, coupled with his inability to blow down a home made of brick, decided that his impatience was too great, and decided to use his copy of the house key immediately.
Well, I was going to wait until you were sleeping, but I ain't going to wait no more! I'm coming for you and your yummy pastries right now!
Mr. Wolf put his key in the door, unlocked it, and swung the door wide open, ready to pounce. But the moment the door opened, a very shrill and loud alarm began to sound. Mr. Wolf froze on the spot, looking angrily at the brother, whom had a smug smile on his snout. He had had an alarm system installed, unbeknownst to Mr. Wolf. Mere moments later, the police arrived and arrested Mr. Wolf, and returned the pastries to the brothers who, at this point, had regained consciousness. They joined the rigmarole at the third brother's home, and Mr. Wolf was sentenced to several years in jail, and the three piggies, albeit a bit wiser for the wear, had an illustrious career as a trio of bakers known for their
Yummy pastries!
Once upon a time there was a duo of acquaintances whom were constantly at odds with one another, a tortoise and a hare. These two would-be friends were never in agreement, simply because the hare was determined to be difficult. No matter what the poor tortoise would say or do, the hare would do the exact opposite. No one knows the reason why the hare is the way he is. That's just the way it is. Isn't it a nice day, hare? No! The sun is so beautiful today, isn't it, hare? Nope. It's so warm. I'm freezing. And relaxing. I gotta move. I think I'm just going to stay in one spot all day long. Well, the hare did not like the idea of Tortoise not moving all day, and he certainly didn't like the idea of himself not moving all day, so he formulated a plan. He decided that the best way for the two to spend their time was to race. He could run and be active, and best of all, he was certain that he would be the victor. Let me tell you, if there is anything on earth that hare loves more than being the polar opposite of tortoise, it is winning. This, however, did not seem to Tortoise like the best way to spend his time.
Come on, let's race! Let's race! Let's race!
Nope.
Yeah, let's race! I bet I'll beat ya! I bet I will!
Yep.
Come on! I promise, I won't beat you by too much! Let's go!
Nope.
All right, you ready? Let's go! We'll go around the whole village just once, and we'll finish right here!
Nope.
Are you set? Are you ready? Let's go!
Nope.
Go!
Nope. Hare ran and ran and ran as fast as his long furry legs would carry him. He knew that Tortoise would never catch up to him, for tortoises are ever so slow.
I'm the fastest!
Especially when compared to a hare like himself. He knew he was surely the fastest hare in all the world.
I'm so fast! I'm so much faster than that slow tortoise! I bet I'm the fastest hare in the world! What the what?
Hare looked ahead of him and saw Tortoise laying in the sun, smiling and enjoying himself at the finish line. Hare, being exhausted from all his running, was not able to think clearly and assumed that Tortoise had somehow beaten him to the finish and was relaxing in his triumph.
How did you beat me?
I didn't.
I mean, I was running and I ran as fast as I could, and I didn't see you past me. How?
I didn't.
You can't have won. I'm too fast. You must have cheated. You must have cheated. You could not have beaten me.
When Hare finally ceased his verbal assault, Tortoise calmly explained that he did not cheat. Nor did he win or lose. He simply chose not to race. Racing is not his idea of fun. He did not, however, want Hare to miss a chance of enjoying himself. So he simply sat and watched Hare move at an impressive speed around the village.
So, you don't like to race?
Nope.
But you like watching me run?
Yup.
I am pretty amazing to watch.
Yup.
And it's nice to be appreciated.
I like it when you are happy being you. Then Hare realized that in trying to change Tortoise, he wasn't being a very good friend. At that moment, Hare decided that instead of forcing Tortoise to do what he wanted to do, he would listen to Tortoise more and try to find a mutual compromise for future endeavors. Thank you, Hare.
I am a pretty good friend, aren't I?
Yup.
I bet I'm probably the best friend in the whole world.
Don't push it. The end. We are putting on a presentation of Red Ridinghood for your viewing pleasure. Oh, I do hope you enjoy. Once upon a time there was a girl who always wore a red riding cloak with a hood, earning her the nickname Red Ridinghood. Her grandmother was recovering from a broken leg she received in a skiing accident, and Red decided to bring her a box of pastries from the very popular bakery in town, the Pig Brothers Bake Shop. As she left the shop, a nefarious shadow peered at her from the alleyway.
Once upon a time, those pigs stopped me from getting what I want. But right now I see a little girl with a box full of exactly what I want. Yummy pastries.
Mr. A. Wolf sped ahead of Red and dug a very large hole in the road using a backhoe he still had from his defunct construction business and covered it with straw. He then jumped out and hid behind the backhoe, waiting for Red to fall, quite literally, into his trap. However, little Red knew the way well, for she was an attentive granddaughter and visited often. And she also knew that the town council had not approved any road work in this vicinity, and approached the backhoe and the large pile of straw cautiously.
This is it. Soon that little girl will fall into my trap, and I'll be able to get those yummy pastries.
Startled by the sudden shout about baked goods, and wary of the suspicious road conditions, Red quickly made her way around the straw area and down the road towards her destination. Perturbed by the inexplicable failure of his trap, Mr. A. Wolf quickly ran down the side of the road, hiding in the brush, and past Little Red to her grandmother's home. There he illegally entered the home and searched for the grandmother, whom he was not able to find. He quickly found a thermometer and poured a glass of water, placed them strategically on the nightstand next to the bed, and buried himself under the comforter. Just then, Little Red entered the domicile and went straight up to the bedroom where Mr. A. Wolf waited. Red looked at the bed, the large lump under the comforter, and the items on the nightstand, and spoke loudly. "Why, Grandmamma, what a large cup of water you have!"
Oh,
Oh, the better to hydrate myself with, my dear.
"And, Grandmamma, what a lovely digital thermometer you have there!"
Oh, the better to keep track of my fever, my dear.
"Why, Grandmamma, didn't you have a broken leg?" Exasperated at being discovered, and impatient to obtain his desires, he growled and leapt up from the bed, ready to pounce. To be met face to face with a police officer, whom immediately placed the wolf under arrest for breaking and entering and attempted pastry theft. You see, Grandmamma wasn't in the house. She was in the garden enjoying the sun when she saw Mr. A. Wolf climbing into a back window. She immediately called the police, and Officer Woodsman arrived at the same time as Red. As the officer escorted Mr. A. Wolf off the premises, he looked straight at the repeat pastry offender and told him,
next time, buddy, stay out of trouble and pay for your yummy pastries. Come on.
The end.
I really liked that story.
Once upon a time, a little girl named Goldilocks was frolicking amongst the flora and fauna of a magical forest. She had, however, been gallivanting for a long while and lost all track of time. Little Goldilocks decided it was well time to head home, for she was feeling peckish and longed for lunch and possibly a rest. On her journey home, she happened upon a small cottage that she hadn't seen before. It was ever so quaint. Goldilocks, being a curious person by nature, felt impelled to investigate.
What a cute little cottage.
Goldilocks was never one to be cautious, and she walked straight into the unlocked home, unconcerned for the potential consequences. Inside, she immediately saw a table that held not one, but 3 bowls of oatmeal. Being hungry and not especially keen on personal boundaries, she sat herself down in front of the largest bowl and spooned a mouthful for herself.
Oh, that burned my tongue.
The largest bowl of oatmeal was far too hot for Goldilocks to partake of, and so she moved over to the next place setting, a large plateful, spread out and flat.
Ew. This one's cold and a little chewy.
Dissatisfied with the somewhat congealed oatmeal, she moved on to the final place setting, a small bowl of oatmeal with a pinch of cinnamon spread on top. It was temperate and delicious.
This one's yummy.
After finishing the pilfered portion, she found herself both full and incredibly drowsy. She wandered into the front room and found a trio of seats placed in front of a very large television. She sat down on the smallest chair first and found that it was too petite for her frame and was quite uncomfortable. She went on to the second chair. It, however, whilst being a fine size, was also covered in stacks of papers of what appeared to be tax information. So she decided it best not to disturb what seemed to be a very precise and tidy system. Lastly, she looked at the third chair, a large recliner, complete with cup holder in the armrest, which just so happened to hold the remote control for the television.
I think I'm just going to sit right here.
She curled herself into the chair, turned on the telly, and found herself watching, quite entranced, a documentary on cultivating honeycomb. Soon thereafter she fell fast asleep, and the cottage occupants arrived home. A family of 3 bears entered and immediately noticed something was amiss.
Dear, I seem to notice that something is amiss.
Did y'all forget to lock the door again?
My apologies, my love. I better take a look around. You and the baby stay put.
Mama Bear marched straight into the kitchen and saw not only that someone had taken bites from her and her husband's oatmeal, but that the entire serving of baby bears had been eaten.
Daddy! Somebody's been eating our food. You and the baby stick there. Keep them eyes peeled. I'm going to have a look around. Of course, dear.
Just then, Baby Bear looked over at the chairs in the front room and saw Goldilocks in Mama Bear's recliner, snoring softly.
Ah! What happened?
Then Baby Bear walked over to sleeping Goldilocks and nudged her awake.
Oh, hello. May I ask, who are you?
My name is Goldilocks.
Baby Bear then explained that he and his parents understand that Goldilocks was hungry and sleepy, but that it isn't okay to walk into someone's home, eat their food, and fall asleep in their recliner without being invited.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I wasn't thinking.
Imagine how you would feel if I came to your place and ate your dinner.
Goldilocks agreed that her actions were inexcusable and offered to order a pizza delivery as recompense. Mama heartily agreed, and Goldilocks helped Daddy Bear with the dishes afterward. The end. Once upon a time there was a teenage boy named Jack. He lived on a small farm with his mother and his motorbikes. Jack loved to fix and work on motorcycles of all kinds, dirt bikes, mopeds, cruisers, street racers. If it has 2 wheels and a motor, Jack loved it. And had several. One morning, Jack's mother woke up grumpily to the fact that she was out of coffee. So she went to the converted barn where Jack was already up and replacing a piston ring. She asked if Jack would run to the store and pick up some coffee beans for her French press.
Sure.
I'll just take Bessie there and run to the market for you.
Jack eagerly jumped at a chance to ride. He took the money from his mother and rode off on a small yet mighty-looking motorcycle that had an odd, blotchy black and white paint scheme and long handlebars, giving the impression that Jack was riding a bi-wheeled cow to town. Thus the bovine moniker. Jack soon arrived at the market and went in search of his mother's coffee beans. He was, however, distracted and thinking about replacing the head gasket on the motor he was currently swapping rings on.
I need to remember to change out that plug, too.
In his mechanical musings, he made a grave error. Instead of buying his mother a bag of Arabica beans, he instead purchased a bag of abracadabra beans. Whilst well known for their magical abilities, they do not make a tasty coffee. In his defense, they were packaged similarly and in the same aisle. Jack arrived home, eager to get back to his work, and placed the bag of beans on the kitchen counter.
Ma, the beans are on the counter. I'm going back to the garage. Bye.
Jack's mother groggily galumphed to the kitchen and started her morning routine, not noticing the purchase error and grinding the abracadabra beans and putting them in her French press. When she poured her heated water over the beans, they started to glow, a fact that went completely unnoticed by the sleep-deprived parent. When Mother poured the contents of the press into her cup and added the cream and sugar, the glow turned into a slow, swirling pulse of light. Mother brought the mixture up to her mouth to take a sip, and quickly noticed that her morning beverage was looking less like coffee and more like an evening at the club. It was then she noticed the purchase error and sighed defeatedly. She tossed the magical mixture out of the window and decided to drive herself into the store in hopes of finding the beans that she truly desired. What Mother did not notice as she drove away was that the liquid she haphazardly tossed out her window had splashed onto a wheel ramp that was sitting outside the barn, and then began to vibrate. Jack was working intently and did not notice anything out of the ordinary until...
What is that?
Jack looked outside his window and saw the yellow metal ramp stretching and growing and filling the space between the house and the barn, pushing up against the wall of the home and growing straight at the barn itself. Upward and outward it grew, faster and faster, the edge of the ramp just brushing past the cockerel in the top of the barn, narrowly avoiding damaging the barn itself. Soon the ramp had grown so large the top was no longer visible, for it had plunged into a thick cloud cover.
Dude.
Jack rushed quickly to outfit himself in helmet, glove, and glasses, and jumped onto Bessie and rode out to the foot of the mountainous ramp. He revved the motorbike and charged forward and up the ramp. After what Jack would later describe as his most exhilarating ride he had ever taken, he finally reached the clouds and rode straight in without a moment's hesitation. When he broke through the cloud cover, he was flabbergasted at what he saw. Instead of the top of the yellow ramp and the white fluffy of the clouds, he was on an enormous driveway next to a massive yet dingy white building that led out onto what he could only describe as a rural suburban road. The cloud in the ramp had simply disappeared. But that's not all. He looked up to his left and saw a giant antique moped. This moped was the size of a large house. For those of you who may not be clear on what a moped is, it is like a small motorcycle that oft uses pedals to move both the motorbike and start the engine. It looked very old and had some rust on it in spots, but to Jack it was absolutely gorgeous. Then, from out of the home, came a giant. He came outside wearing a helmet almost exactly like the one Jack was wearing, and a very odd pair of goggles. Oh. The giant sat down on the massive moped and attempted to start the motor. To no avail. He pedalled and pedalled furiously, but the moped engine simply would not start. The giant just rode around, pedaling in a small circle on his driveway, very slowly.
Ah! I just bought this thing, and he told me it worked fine. All I wanted to do was feel the wind on my face.
Jack looked up at the bellowing behemoth and knew the solution to his predicament.
Excuse me. Hey! I know.
Jack, unable to get the attention of the crying giant, went over to Bessie and started her up, revving the engine as loudly as he could.
Hey, chill. I know what's wrong with your pad. You do? Yeah, you forgot to squeeze the clutch. It's that little lever under your brake under the left side. It pulls the clutch arm onto the outer disc and engages the crankshaft and magneto to pump the piston and spark the plug. Okay.
The giant, both confused by the tiny person with a tiny motorcycle and eager to get his new purchase running, sat upon his moped and followed the tiny biker's instructions. And the moped sprung to life. The giant was so happy he lifted the little man and his tiny motorcycle, that for some reason reminded him of a cow, up off of the ground and held them to his face.
Oh, thank you so much, tiny person with your cow motorcycle. I am so glad you are my friend now.
Jack said he was pleased to help a fellow biker and welcomed him to the club. The giant was so pleased that he insisted that Jack join him on his very first ride around town. In fact, the giant planned on treating him to something downtown, for there were several quaint shops in this village.
Well, could use a cup of coffee.
So Jack and the giant rode off together towards coffee and the start of a wonderful friendship. The end.
That was a great show, wasn't it, Arnold?
Oh, yes, I enjoyed that very much. We started with the 3 little pigs and went all the way to Jack and the giant. What do you think we'll do next?
Oh, well, that's an easy one.
Really? How do you know?
Because I've got a list.
Of course.
So the next one we're going to do, starting the next episode, is going to be Hansel and Gretel. However, thank you for joining us. I hope you had a good time.
I know I sure did.
And now, I've got one more song for you.
Really?
Yes, really. My favorite way to say goodbye is not goodbye to you. Not adios, arrivederci, sayonara, or adieu. My favorite way to say goodbye, the best way that I knew. My favorite way to say goodbye is to say that I love you. Thanks, guys.